couldn't be here tonight, and so they can watch it later. Yeah, okay, now I think everybody's muted. So welcome everyone, and thanks for coming. So this is a session for, especially for those who are interested in coming and studying with our new program at Mipham Institute. So we're very excited to get this started officially like that and meet some of you for the first time. The way we plan to run this is I have a short presentation to cover the main points or the main elements of information. Really, everything is already on the website, but sometimes it's easier to explain a little bit more. And I'll try to do that very quickly. And afterwards, everybody will get a chance to ask more specific questions. I think for some of you who are perhaps considering actually joining the program, you may have like some practical, very specific questions. So I think it may be useful for you to get a chance to ask those. So what we'll do is I'll start right away with the presentations, and afterwards for the question session, I would ask you to type the questions in the chat function of the presentation. And I think that's the most efficient way of having the questions asked and answered, and then we'll go through each one individually. And hopefully we'll have time to answer every concern or question you may have. So I'm going to go ahead with the slides. Wait a minute. Thanks everyone for joining. It's very nice to see you all. Some known people and some new also. And here is the slideshow. So these are just a very few basic points of information that I have created in order to go over the main points. And of course, it's not going. Yeah. So just the introduction. Mipham Institute is quite a new project, even for me. A few months ago, I didn't even know we were going to start this project on the Padmasambhava Buddhist Center, but it really started last summer in July when I was in PSL, and under the sort of encouragement and recommendation of our teacher, Khenpo Tsewang Rinpoche, Khenpo Tsewang Danjaya Rinpoche, I was there, and somehow the elements came into place together with Khenpo Rinpoche and with the Pema Family Foundation and with PSL, and the idea came up of starting a sort of natural continuation of our programs with PBC, and to expand a little bit our activity for those who have a little bit more time and interest to focus on learning Tibetan in the Buddhist view in more detail. So I was asked by Rinpoche to kind of start and work with this program and kind of get it started. But really, like in last June, I had no idea we were going to do this. But we also decided to just go ahead. So we're planning to launch our programs, as you know, I think, because those of you who are here, you've read our website, from next fall, from September. And it's a 3-year program, and it's a big commitment. So we want to give everybody a chance to ask their questions. But really, the main thing to understand is that we really see Mipham Institute as fitting within the activities of PBC and as a natural continuation of the teachings of Venerable Khenpo Rinpoche, and really to go and develop more programs to go a little bit more in depth for those who want to apply this kind of study part of Buddhist tradition as we received it from Tibetan lineage masters. As you know, within PBC, we've had Tibetan language over the years, several programs. We've also had a very rich shedra series, starting, I think, from the early 2000s for people who study the philosophy. But this is to make it a little bit more formal and a little bit more robust. And so this is what the Mipham Institute is about. The name Mipham Institute was chosen by Rinpoche really to highlight our connection with that great teacher, Mipham Rinpoche, who we consider to be kind of our main lineage teacher for us, but also for our teacher, the late Venerable Khenchen Paden Sherab Rinpoche, who was so close to Mipham, who himself composed many commentaries on his works and also always emphasized the teachings of Mipham for like the sadhanas and practice and commentaries and so forth. And so we see ourselves as the natural continuation also of our connection with that great teacher. So just I'm going to go very quickly over the main goals of the program. The goal is to develop in-depth connection with the lineage teachings. Of course, there is a kind of, with Mipham Institute, there will be a little bit more of an academic dimension to the teaching, the kind of study we're going to do. That means going into the philosophical commentaries with more detail, more depth. Okay, but it's really not something completely fundamentally different from the way we've been receiving teachings and practicing over the years. Is to just study not the way we do, for example, in the universities for academic purposes, theoretical or purely historical or humanities kind of thing, but really as a way to connect with the practice lineage. It's also a goal of the Institute to sort of foster and encourage a new kind of a continuing generation of students who can learn the Tibetan language. So we have a little bit more time to have some people who are comfortable both with Tibetan and English and sort of facilitate a more in-depth transmission of the teachings over the next years by having people who are familiar with both languages and can read in Tibetan, read teachings, commentaries, but also apply that to practice. Okay. Our approach to studying Buddhist philosophy is we're trying to stay as close as possible to the lineage teachings and the lineage kind of methods. In our Nyingma school, that was mostly developed in the 19th century based on commentaries by Mipham and the different shedras that were built in Tibet, but also very much in line with the way it is studied right now in places like here, Nepal and India, within the monasteries. Of course, there are some differences, but we're trying to follow a similar approach. And really, if somebody asks me what is our approach to the study of Buddhist thought and Buddhist philosophy, my kind of simple way of putting it is approaching and viewing teachings as pith instructions to be applied to our own life, and not as intellectual curiosities for intellectual history, and not as a sort of anthropology of Buddhist views, and not as, I mean, whatever the theoretical goals maybe people have in academia, but really as something to be applied to our own lives. That is the main approach, which is also the way often we see the teachings described in the non-sectarian approach of really treating all Buddhist teachings as pith instructions and try to understand them so we can apply them to our own life, our own practice. Regarding the contents of the program, I think you all read from the website, we're trying to launch a 3-year program. Maybe you can see all this. I don't know, I hope not. 3 years, so it's not just a program where people come casually and take a part here and there. We're trying to really create a cohort of students who are going to take the whole program. The reason for that is that in our experience with classical Tibetan, learning Tibetan in the Dharma Center, it's difficult to create a sense of commitment over a long time and sense of continuity where people really progress by following a curriculum, and we often end up starting from the beginning again and again and not really getting some progress. So now we're trying to create the conditions for people to be able to really study and improve, so that in the end they develop some familiarity and some also confidence in reading and using Tibetan. The goal, so for Tibetan language is very important to understand, because I heard also some questions about that last week, is classical Tibetan is what we're going to be teaching, okay, not conversation. We're not going to do classes on going to the restaurant and ordering food or that kind of thing. It's really focusing on learning Tibetan grammar and learning the classical language, the language that is used for Dharma teachings. The goal is to be able to read commentaries, read the teachings from Indian Shastras and their translation, and read the commentaries, but also to some extent to be able to read practice texts in Tibetan, which sometimes we still do also the sadhanas, for example, in the practice together in Tibetan, and so to also help students do that, because it really is the same language. Okay. Now that being said, it doesn't mean we're just going to be reading silently and kind of treating it as a dead language. Okay, there is a way to use classical Tibetan, whether it's in our study of the philosophy or in practice as a living language. No, okay, so it's not like we're still going to be talking about pronunciation and being able to talk, being able to ask questions, for example, in class in Tibetan eventually, not right from the beginning probably, but eventually, but really not focusing on everyday conversational Tibetan. That decision really is from our sort of sense of wanting to focus on the main goals of the program. But also in my experience, if somebody learns really good classical Tibetan, it's also quite easy after, if they want to learn conversational Tibetan, to pick it up. But the main factor seems to be immersion, being able to live in a place where there are Tibetan speakers and applying the knowledge of the language to learn it. And there are a lot of places where you can study that already. So we decided we're not going to be focusing on that for our program. Second, regarding the philosophy, we're doing really shedra style. So in Tibet, as you know, often the monasteries have both shedra and drupda. Drupda are the retreat programs for people to go into meditation retreats and focus on the practice. And shedra is the kind of explanation part, or the intellectual part, you could say, where people really study in depth the view teachings of the Buddha and trying to get a lot of clarity on their meaning and their importance and how to understand them. So that is how we see it. I think we have already at Pimasam Yeling and Padma Sambhava Buddhist Center kind of drupda aspect, because the Rinpoches have been teaching so many things over the years. We've received so many teachings. And we've had also some focus on understanding philosophy and view, but this is to make it a little bit more in-depth and more robust, and especially including people to keep studying in the program that progresses over time in a sort of curriculum. So for the philosophy, the teachers will be people who are trained in the traditional institutions, that means in the monastic shedras, so basically kempos or people who have graduated from some of the shedras. It's not going to be me, for example, who's going to be teaching philosophy courses directly. We're really trying to stay with the model of the line-by-line commentary on the Indian text, and based on the Tibetan commentaries, for example, by teachers like Mipham, who has commentaries on most of the important texts of the Indian tradition. That being said, it's not going to be purely based on the Kempo's lecture. Traditionally, there's a review class also in the shedra. After students have been explained, they can come back and ask questions. And so this is going to be a part of the program also, review class, but also more like contextual introductions. In my experience, this is needed also for students who are taking the class. It's useful to have a more contextual presentation, more general introduction to some topics. So we will have some of that also. And that might be taught by people like myself, for example, or eventually some other faculty members. As for the practicalities, the format, we're trying to go based on advice of Khenpo Rinpoche and based on sort of our experience. We're trying to go with a combination of both in-person and online teaching. So the in-person part will take place in Pema Samiling Retreat Center. We have wonderful facilities there, and I think many of you are familiar with our retreat center. We have a very big land with over 100 acres and natural space and quite contemplative environment, and with the support of the local Sangha there. And our goal is to not just be online and listening to lectures, but to really create a sense of community in the students and also the teachers. And so it's not just this disembodied watching screens all the time, but we try to get to know each other and support each other in learning and studying. And also, you know, especially that in-person interaction and that sense of being all together, we think is very important. There are many online programs everywhere, but we think this is very important for us to be able to progress. So the in-person sessions at PSL, I think you've seen it on the website, will take place twice a year for the first 3-year batch of the program. The first one will be in September, this coming September, and the second one is in June. So they're like in the beginning and end of the academic year, you could say. And they last for 4 weeks each, so basically a month. So students have to be ready to be in PSL for twice a year for a full month for that part of the program. The time commitment, okay, for the program, for this program, eventually we will try to expand and have a little bit more sort of slow-paced kind of classes and sort of learning activities that people can do from home on a more casual basis. But for this program, it's very important that all aspects are required. So we don't really want students to take only the in-person and not the online, or only the online and not the in-person, or only the philosophy and not the Tibetan, for example. We're trying to really make a full curriculum that everybody takes, so every student is progressing at a similar pace, and then it's much easier also to teach because people have a similar level of understanding and progression. Okay, so aspects, all the parts are required, and they are, compulsory. The level of study is, we also trying to get, it's going to be not just kind of beginning and casual, but people who want to take the study at Mipham Institute should understand that this is an intensive program, and there are classes every day. And in the language course, for example, you have to be ready to keep up the pace and kind of learn and progress as we go, because if we really want students to progress and be able to read and read the sadhanas, read the commentaries slowly, and become confident in that aspect over 3 years, it demands quite a level of commitment. And so it's kind of an important thing for people to understand that this is quite demanding kind of program. We're not going to be completely traditional on this point. In Tibet is extremely demanding, and students, who cannot follow usually would be kind of left out or kicked out or anything like that. So we're not going to be so harsh on this, but people should understand that yes, this is intensive, and you have to be ready to really study basically full time while you're at PSL. And even later on from the sessions at home, it's an ongoing program, and it will be demanding. Okay. While we're at PSL, there will be an intensive program, which is basically full-time study. So everyday philosophy class, everyday Tibetan, and also review class. So people have to kind of imagine, those of you who went to university, similar to being in a full-time program in university. Okay, so you shouldn't expect like to do so many other things while you are living at PSL and you're doing the 1 month in-person program. We're trying to really use that time together to really get started and set up a very strong sort of momentum for our study. So that will be a full-time session. After the 1 month session at PSL, we'll have a break, and then we'll start doing the online program. That will be slightly less intensive. Here, for the time commitment for the online, there will be classes to take every day, every weekday. Some of them will offer some degree of flexibility, because we're hoping to have some pre-recorded lectures that people can take in their own time. But there will also be some live sessions. For example, the Tibetan language classes, I hope to run as live sessions. And these may not happen every day, but still it will be a significant commitment. So you can expect about 3 hours of live session, for example. And with this kind of study also, you should understand that similar to when you're taking university level classes, it's not just about showing up to class. When you learn a language, for example, there's a lot of time you do on your own at home. Homework, memorizing vocabulary, doing exercises, and things like that. And that is the same also, that is true also for the philosophy class, where we also need to spend some time getting familiar with the material and making sure we identify all questions and so forth. For the format, of course, we're trying to be very close to the lineage sort of model, but of course we don't have every requirement that people were following in Tibet. For example, in Tibet, it was really restricted to monastic communities. So now, of course, we will also allow lay people. This is more widely. And in Tibet, for example, it was also restricted based on gender. So of course, we're not going to follow anything like that. But still, we're trying to create a sense of shedras being very places of intensive study where people really apply themselves and learn, in an intensive way, and that becomes your practice, so to speak. So you're sort of engaged in that in a very intensive way. I think this is the last slide. So regarding living at PSL, many of you are familiar already with the retreat center. There are very good quality accommodations. Those of you who are already considering in a practical way coming and you don't know with PSL, there's a link on our programs page that explains how it works. There are some private rooms available. There are some shared dormitories, even like some kind of smaller apartments, which I cannot guarantee will be available, but I think that to some extent will be. Okay, so there are very good facilities, and also you have access to the land. That also means that you will have access to or be part of the community at PSL, which means there's everyday daily practice, different events on the main kind of days of the month, 10th day and 25th day, things like that. There's often some other programs. Sometimes Khenpo Rinpoche also is teaching a little bit here and there. There's other programs going on. So this is all parts of the benefit of being at PSL. For those who don't know, we're located in upstate New York. the Catskills area. So it's beautiful natural environment as well. There will also be, usually there's meals prepared by local Sangha. So the details are not all worked out, but there will be, basically ways to become part of the local community, and so that you can also have all those facilities arranged for yourself. There's also, I'm sure the question will come up of that we have a local Sangha of people who don't live at PSL but live in the area. So that will be, of course, available as well. Those who are based locally can come in for class every day. You don't have to stay at PSL itself. But the main part is to be there for all classes and learning activities. So that's the overview really of the main points, which I'm not sure I really added much more from the website, but these are the main points. And so now I would encourage you, like if there's any question, any specific things you would like to ask, please, I think the easiest way is to type in the chat, because so just we don't get lost into connecting mics and things like that. So I would encourage you, like if you have any question, like please go ahead and we'll answer everything like one by one. But that's the overview. And I hope I didn't forget anything important. Chenny, by the way, I'm Philip, so I'm going to be doing some managing of the program, but also some of the teaching, especially the Tibetan language. And Chenny Jamso, who also Chenny Gyatso, you can also see, is also helping me with the running of the program and the administration and programming, and she beautifully helped with the website and things like that. So we're both kind of the members of the team now. So just so introductions, but so I'll be answering most of the questions. If anything came up, anything? Okay, I see one here. What would be the hours for the in-person? I can't take a month off work, so hoping to work and take classes. And what would be the hours for online? Okay, thanks for that question. Yeah, that's very important. Yeah, as I just said a few minutes ago, for the in-person program at PSL is pretty much a full-time commitment. So if we have about an hour or an hour and a half of the philosophy course, and then an hour and a half or so of Tibetan and review class, and then plus with the study, it will be hard to keep working during that time. Okay. For the online part of the program, we're trying to design it so people can keep a part-time job, for example, or maybe full-time if they're really committed and they have a lot of energy. But usually, for example, in the universities, we consider roughly in humanities, we had 15 hours of class was considered a full-time load. And for 1 hour of class, we usually expect about 3 hours of preparation outside. Okay, so during the in-person session at PSL, it will be pretty much equivalent to a full-time load of courses at college level. For the online, more like part-time. Okay, but you still have to expect every day to have things to do and vocab to learn and homework, and also participate in some live sessions. So it does require some flexibility and commitment. For that time commitment or who are interested, we do have in the books the project of eventually starting a slower pace program where people study the similar approach and similar materials, but maybe with more like 1 day per week kind of thing, or sessions and things like that. But our program is now, we're trying to really focus on launching the main 3-year full hour cohort. That's the main goal, to really get it launched that way. And the other programs hopefully will come a little bit after, but there's been a lot of demands, and I know it's hard for people to make the time unless you're retired or anything like that. So we're going to be trying to make that available as well eventually. So I hope that answers the first question. Now I have a second one. Marie, once the first 4-week in-person session is done, how soon will the online sessions begin? Now, also, how many weeks online per semester? Yes, good one. So the tentative plan now is to have, after the end of September, having a 2-week break, about 2-week break, and then reconvene around mid-October. And the online program we're planning to run for, I think it's 8 weeks or maybe 10 weeks, something like that. So it ends around early mid-December-ish kind of time. I think around December, the 10th of December. And so, but those are 5 days a week, so weekends are off, but still it's happening on a daily basis for about 10 weeks. when we go through these texts, for example, the kinds of literature we'll be studying are texts like Bodhicharyavatara, entering the way of the Bodhisattva, the letter to a friend by Nagarjuna, and eventually maybe we'll go into more depth into the philosophy. It really takes some time to go line by line and the explanation of all the points, and that's why we focus on that. And for Tibetan also, really now we just don't want people to learn the alphabet and do a little bit and then come again. We really want to take it to the level where you're comfortable in your reading, and so that's the goal. So that's kind of the model. And then after the December the fall online session ends, there will be a break also, and then we'll be reconvening pretty much like at the end of February for 10 weeks again, which takes us to early May about, and then break, and then live session at PSL in June, which June in PSL is a very nice time. And also, those of you, yeah, that's it. I should stay to the question. Okay, thanks, Maria. I hope that answers. Can you expand on the aspirations and for students who go through the program? Yes, sure. Thank you for the question. So we're not going to be giving BA degrees, MA degrees, and things like that. Like we're not involved in that part. For example, unlike places like Indian Institute in Nepal, but we're trying to create basically a robust program where when people complete it and graduate, like they can say, we can know that they have a solid grasp of the philosophy of the view and the Tibetan as well. So the aspiration is really to help foster a further generation of people who can eventually, hopefully, pass on the teachings. And we think is very to the further generations. And we think it's really important element of being able to continue the lineage, to have that strong basis in the literature, in the teachings that we receive from India and Tibet. And so the aspirations is really similar to what we had in Tibetan shedras. So to develop, maybe not exactly using the titles and the certifications for Lopen and Kempo, but as close as possible as we can get to that kind of certification of people where we know they have a solid grasp of the view, they can explain it, and they can also use the commentaries to support their own sort of understanding and explanation, and also have that in-depth knowledge of both languages and contribute to making that transmission happen over the next. And so traditionally in Tibetan shedras, people study, I mean, depending on the schools and the places, from 7 to 13 years. So we're hoping that people who complete the first 3 years, we might be able to run a second sort of more advanced session afterwards. And probably at that time, we won't need to spend so much time learning Tibetan. Hopefully the Tibetan will be pretty good by then. We'll really learn more about the view and eventually have people who are comfortable understanding the main elements of the teachings that we follow in our lineage, which are basically Madhyamaka philosophy, a little bit Yogacara, Abhidharma, and things like that, and some Buddhist logic and so forth. So that's it. Thank you. Okay, next one. I have some years of classical Tibetan, but not much philosophical. Are there expectations for people's level of Tibetan at the start? Yes, good question. That is one of the questions I'm a little bit dealing with right now. There are some students who might want to join, but already have some background in Tibetan. So it's very important for us to make it available with people who have no background at all in Tibetan, so that they can start from scratch. Either we're going to be starting right from the beginning and learning the writing system and so forth, or maybe right after that, so with beginning of grammar and comprehension. But of course, based on who ends up taking the program, we'll also adapt our teaching to the level of students. So already I have quite a few people who told me, yeah, I have already some quite good Tibetan, will I be able to join and things like that. So it's very possible, based on who joins, that we will have 2 different levels of Tibetan for a while in the beginning, so that people who already have some background can continue from where they're at, and not just start right at the beginning level. But it's difficult now to know for sure without knowing who's there. And so that's why those who seriously apply and want to join probably would be asking to meet you in person and get a little bit more details about what kind of studies you have done in the past. Maybe in the beginning we would be kind of doing different activities to really where people are at in terms of their level of Tibetan and get started like that. So yeah, it's very likely that we'll have a sort of beginning class and more intermediate Tibetan. But hopefully eventually then people can all be together and reading just directly and learning all together. Yes. Thank you, Jenny, for the dates. Yeah, the precise, more specifically, the dates have been posted by Jenny. Put in the chat if you want. Okay, next question. I was studying and looking at the website, curling for the 3-year program. I want to cover all aspects of Tibetan during 3 years. Is the main aim of this course towards translation and publication of text? Okay, I'll try to cover all elements. Yes, I think it's important to learn the scripts. So probably we'll be doing that as well. It's kind of, this is my personal view, but I consider that it's kind of a weakness of the way Tibetan is taught in many universities, for example, without learning Ume and cursive scripts. And it's usually something you can learn very quickly when you have Tibetan, like in a weekend. But some people at advanced levels in universities don't learn it. So yeah, we'll learn that at some point. But the goal is the main course towards translation and publication of text. I would say to that, no. The translation is an art in itself, and it involves, in my experience, as much work working with how to express things in the destination language, as well as understanding of the literature. And there are existing programs for that, and that's really not our main goal, to train students to become translators. We really will be focusing more on developing an in-depth understanding of text that, for the most part, are already translated. And of course, that can be an avenue that would be very useful for people who want to do translation in the future, but it's not a translator training program per se. That's not the main goal of this program. It's more a scholar practitioner program for people who want to practice and apply understanding of the view to their own contemplative practice. Thanks for the question, Dario. Another question, is there any possibility to focus mostly on the Tibetan? So I think that would mean take only the Tibetan program and not the philosophy, or maybe take the philosophy but not focus so much on it. Yeah, as I said, our priority, or what we would really like, is to create a community of students who all study the same material together at the same time. But that being said, especially for the live portion, there may be people who want to take only the Tibetan. Good question. I mean, I'm not sure really. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Maybe that could be possible. I think we'll have to discuss this. We'll have to see. I'm not completely against it, but at the same time. So let me say I'll consider it. I'll consider this, but I don't want to guarantee right now. It's something I've been thinking about. But I really would like to encourage people to take the whole thing. But if they want to take only the Tibetan, if it doesn't interfere with any rest, it might be possible. So let me think and get back to you about that, if that's okay, Carl and Nancy, or whoever of you asked that question. Since it's Nancy. Okay, thanks. Any other question? I see there's a question being written right now. I'll wait a bit. Okay, question about the costs and expenses in the website. Does the cost indicated in the website for the 3-year? Okay, the cost per program, which is I think 3,850, that is per year. Get to cover the teaching fees. So we do have support for the programs and generously from Mipham Family Foundation, but we also have costs running it, and we sort of want to keep the program rolling. And also, we are generously hosted by PSL, but we also don't want to be a burden, like financially, on the center. And so that's why we have the costs as they are. As we said on the website, though, if it's really a problem for people, we can talk about it. And there are ways we're developing program for scholarship or to help people cover those fees if you're really not able to do that. And also there's something which we ourselves as the Mipham Institute will not be can be able to remove is like the cost for living accommodations at Pema Samili, because somebody has to cover that, but we're trying to keep it as low as possible and so not to be prohibitive in any way. And I think for the amount of hours and kind of teaching you get, we're trying to keep it reasonable. So if the program cost itself is a problem, you can be in touch and we can talk about it. There's also we had some generous donations to support people who want to take it but don't have the means. But that's for the 1 year. Can one pay for one semester or only and then for another? Yeah, I'm sure we can have some flexibility regarding the payments, like twice a year or something like that. That will be possible. And yeah, I think regarding reimbursing fees and things like that, we haven't worked all of these details out, but I would think like maybe per semester, or per semester or per half year, roughly would be the way would be processing the payments. And so if somebody needs to leave, for example, yeah, they would not be responsible for the cost of the whole program in advance. We could work on something like that. Thank you. Okay, another question from Emma. A question on behalf of a friend: would the program make sense for some without much background in the Dharma? Or is the aim towards established practitioners? We really want to make it accessible for people who don't have a lot of prior study of those materials. But at the same time, just from hearing from the people who are interested in joining, most people already have a quite good background in Buddhist thought, Buddhist practice. So it will be made available really for people who don't have a strong background. And we will, in that case, we will have things like recommended readings to help people get prepared to be able to follow. But really, no, you don't need any kind of big background. Of course, it would be more work for somebody who is not familiar at all with Buddhism. And it's a big commitment in time and so forth for somebody who doesn't really know like what Buddhist thought is about. But we're trying to make it available for people without any kind of formal requirements to begin with. Thank you. Another question, thanks to Jenny. Is this program for students of any school of Tibetan Buddhism? Yes. Okay. Of course, everybody is welcome. Students should know, though, that, yeah, we are a Buddhist center, and this is a Buddhist program. And so is like that is the kind of our bias. We're not hiding that. We're trying to study the teachings as something to apply in our lives based on the lineage and based on our teacher's instruction. So yes, like is not, but of course there are different ways of being committed to Dharma communities and Buddhist teaching. So we're not going to be testing like any sort of things that people kind of preferences people have. But regarding any school of Tibetan Buddhism, yes, everybody is welcome. Now we don't hide that our main sort of connection with Tibetan lineages is through the Nyingma school, through PBC, through our teachers. And that also will be reflected in the kind of commentaries we study, for example, mostly written by Nyingma authors such as Mipham and people like that. But that being said, is the main materials, the Indian treatises, are common to all schools of Tibetan Buddhism. And so if people have come from a slightly different school, there's really no problem. And that's really no problem at all for us. Like everybody is really welcome. And of course, you won't be required to follow any sort of orthodoxy or follow any view. The approach is really open-ended inquiry. But that being said, yes, it is kind of based on the Nyingma school, but yeah, nothing is required in terms of being committed to any lineage or school or anything like that. It's really open for everybody. And the Tibetan language is the same for all Tibetans, like all the Tibetan Chukyi, Tibetan classical Tibetan is the same. That's it. And our approach is really to be as much as possible non-sectarian, like to treat all the Buddha's teachings as pith instructions, and to welcome any sort of question or inquiry. And that includes also, is traditional also in the Tibetan system to sort of consider the different interpretations made by other schools. When we go in depth into study, that happens whether you want it or not. So it's not going to be restricted in any way to only Nyingmapa or anything like that. And of course, our approach is a little bit more traditional, but what is very important for me is to not just treat that as kind of ideas in the museum of the history of ideas, but really develop our own understanding based on our current world. And there's some work of translating into the language we are familiar with, really developing our understanding, like each for ourselves. And the goal is not just to learn the orthodox view. The goal is to be able to develop our own understanding, to apply to our own life, our own practice. And that means that the questions that come up are not all in the Indian treatises. Okay, so we keep it alive as a live study. We apply. And so in that sense, yeah, there will be a lot of open approach to all kinds of questions that people may have based on their own background. Thank you. Okay, regarding applications, is there a separate form? So far, we're just going with applications through email. So you can send us an email. There's an address, applications@miphaminstitute.org. And now we're asking CV and a short statement and 2 references. Really is just to help us know you better. And so we also want to make sure that people join and like are in good conditions to be kind of have a successful experience going through the program. And that's really why we're asking for those materials, but just as email is fine. And I would like to say, like, it's very possible that we may ask to meet in person for a short time, just to make sure, you know, that we're on the right page and get to know you, and you get to know us, and maybe people have more questions. But so far, yeah, you can just send it as an email, and we'll go through those and probably get back to you very soon, and then get a final, you know, approval in early April. What's the date? I think 15th of April, I think, something like that. Okay, is there any idea yet on the time of day for online daily classes? Okay, that's good. Getting into the details, huh? This is not set yet, but I would probably imagine that we would have, as I said, when we go online, there will be some pre-recorded sessions that people can take at their own convenience. When we're at PSL, it will be probably both morning and afternoon sessions, but no early morning and no night. Although I haven't considered that. If that were to make life easier for people who are doing the online programs, I could consider that. That's the kind of thing, for example, you could write us about and say, during the online session, it would be better for me to take the live session later on in the day or something like that. We can consider that. It really depends on how many students we have and where they are located. There's an issue also sometimes with time zones. People who may live in other areas, whether on the West Coast or even in other continents. So I don't want to set it now before we know who's there and how it's going to work. But probably, I mean, we could do something, for example, like trying to keep classes before lunch. So if somebody has a part-time job, they can work in the afternoon, something like that. But it's not set yet. But we will have some flexibility with that. But I think we'll wait and see who's joining and what their needs are, and we'll try to be flexible and accommodate people there. Me, I prefer morning classes, just because afternoon somehow is not that good. But we can also do that. We'll see. Okay, yeah. If for applications, there's a link to our page there. Thank you. Okay, another question. Diploma or degree? Okay, so yes, we're hoping that people who complete the 3-year program, we will be giving some formal recognition, but that will be a statement from the institute. Okay, there will not be any formal academic degree recognized by the US government or anything like that, because we're just not going to get into those administrative sides of things for a while, I think. That being said, it's possible, I think, after a while, that universities, for example, might recognize our courses as prior study, and that could help you to sort of, I don't know, establish like prerequisites for some courses, for example, in Tibetan. We're just starting, so as you probably understand, this has not been set up yet. But yeah, although we're not ourselves trying to develop university types of programs and degrees, I'm very happy and open to have good collaboration with existing universities and things like that. And it's possible maybe even people from other places might want to join eventually. So hopefully, yes, there will be some sort of recognition, but I can't really speak on behalf of the universities and whether they will recognize what we do. But my aim, my background is teaching Tibetan at university, in university programs. I started teaching at McGill in 2008, and then here in Nepal at Rangjungse Institute during the 2010s. And that would be our approach, is to have as rigorous or maybe even more rigorous than in the university, and to develop very, very strong knowledge of the language. And usually universities are pretty good at recognizing that by testing like prior levels of study and things like that. But probably not formally in purely academic terms. But yeah, you will be recognized with certificates and things like that. Regarding certificates for partial completion of the program, yeah, we haven't worked those details out yet. I think you can definitely get a letter saying you did 1 year or 2 years of Mipham Institute, but I think regarding the certificate of completion of the course, the focus will be on completing the whole 3-year program at this point. Well, we've already been over an hour, but I'm happy to stay because there are still questions coming up. So, of course, feel free if you have something else to do or need to go, but I'm happy to keep answering questions. Okay, should we email contact@Mipham Institute? Yes, you should email us as much as you'd like. For any general questions, we have contact@Mipham Institute. For admissions, please use the link or send to admissions@Mipham Institute. This just helps us here internally, like keeping track of applications and things like that. But yeah, those addresses work. Definitely, and we're a small team now, so we basically see everything. But you can email to us at contact, and for admissions, if possible, please use the admissions email address. And for any questions, really don't be shy, you can just email us. It's much more useful for us to know specific questions than trying to guess what people need to know. So it looks like there are no further questions. Was this useful?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
Excellent.
Good. I'm
Very
happy
useful.
this was useful. So is anybody seriously considering joining? I mean, some of you do because you already sent a letter, admission, application, things like that. But yeah, don't be shy. Like, get in touch with us, and we can meet also in person if you have any further questions. But it's new and we're moving a little bit fast. But yeah, we're launching it, and I hope some of you join us next fall at PSL, and we start. I think Khenpo Rinpoche's sort of what he told us is that, yeah, this can really be something important for the transmission of Dharma teachings in the West. And he emphasized also that this was really part of Khenpo Khenchen Paden Sherab's vision to eventually have shedra at PBC. I mean, just in the US, in the West in general, but especially at PBC. As you know, Khenpo himself was a great practitioner, but also very versed in the philosophy and language, grammar, and all of that. And we're trying to honor that vision and to maintain it and pursue it. And we hope to open the door, for this aspect of transmission of Dharma to be established in the West, in the US, in North America. So it's a big vision. We're in our small way, we're trying to do kind of small step for that big vision. And so I'm really happy to see that there's interest and also shared interest for that program. So thanks for joining and thanks for your interest. And I hope we can talk about it more and we can eventually maybe meet in person and you can join us. And that we all learn together more.
Thanks, Philippe. And the website is beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Got
Julie.
a lot of artwork from Pema Samiling.